Last week you saw me make this mold. This week we're going to see if we can't get bubble-free perfect castings from it without using a pressure pot. Just pouring the resin and hoping for the best. We'll see if we can do it. I have high confidence. I'm going to use brand new resin, fresh out of the jar, have never been opened little jars of resin, and we'll pour it and see what happens. Now, I could just take rubber bands. Give me some right here. Give me some rubber bands here. I could just take rubber bands and just kind of wrap around it, you know, willy-nilly like this kind of thing, and just wrap it up. And it would probably work, quite honestly. But already I can see my beautiful invisible parting line is no longer invisible. I can see that the rubber is kind of pulling badly on it. It's just an awkward shape to band up, and all the pulling forces are in this direction, this way. And that's okay, but they're not even. They're at the greatest around the edges. So there's almost no pulling force in the middle. In fact, the opposite. This rubber band is pulling in this direction, which is exactly what you don't want. You want all the rubber bands to be closing evenly and sweetly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a cradle for this mold. A couple of reasons. Number one, you set it on the ground, it doesn't stand up, and I want it standing up like this, not like that. So I'm going to make a little mold cradle, just out of beautiful cardboard. And the other thing we're going to do is make sure that this mold cradle is designed so that it allows the rubber bands to put more even pressure on the mold. Now you could do it, and you saw me do it in a previous video, you could trim these corners because there's enough rubber around that you could shape the mold itself so that the mold was a little bit more of an oval shape. But I still think you would have trouble getting an even overall pressure. You don't need any pressure down here because there's no cuts down here. The only cut is right across here. That's where the cut on the duck is. So this is where you need the pressure, like that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build a little mold cradle, and then we're going to pour some castings. Here's our mold, and I brought it into Procreate so I could show you what we're going to do. Basically, we're just going to build a mold case that looks kind of like that. Here it looks like a Whopper. We're going to build these two sort of round pieces on either side of the mold case so that a rubber band, as you see I just put on there, wraps around like that. Basically, what it is we're doing is we're mimicking a round mold. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but they're close enough. I mean, they're going to do the job. The problem is more of the pulling force is at the corners of the square mold where these green arrows are. So that's where the rubber bands are going to be pulling the hardest. If there was no arc in the mold design, then you would have no pulling force along the flat sides of the mold in the middle, which is exactly where you want the pulling force. You're going to get less pulling force squeezing the mold together at the yellow arrows, but you're going to get enough. So with this distribution of pulling, I think we're going to get a really nice, gentle closure of the mold, and that's how you make really invisible parting lines. I'm building this mold case, but I spared you the joys and excitement of watching me cut out little squares of cardboard. Got those ready. What I did want to do is the relevant pieces, which are the round pieces, the arc pieces. Let's trace out our arcs. Again, you know, this is not the Mars rover. Enormous precision is not required, and you still get an excellent result. You don't have to be fanatically precise with these things. They're going to work. They work anyway, even without cabinetry level precision. Now, in a perfect world, I could cut these with a X-Acto or some other way, but I don't have to. Just cut them. Number two, I'm going to need 6 of these. Just cut these 3, but I already cut the first 3. This is our bottom. These are our sides. So where this is going to go is, one's going to go right here. Let me mark this down. I took some cereal box, which makes really nice, flexible cardboard strips, just about the right weight. So let's go ahead and mark those on there. Mark that on that one, and let's mark this on this one. And now we can get out, my favorite thing in the world, hot melt. This actually is not a terrible use for hot melt. You can do this with Elmer's or some other glue. Hot melt has the advantage of speed. Get it on there. Get the other one going. Okay. Try to get it square or reasonably square. Where's the middle? Right about there's the middle. Right about there's the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Same with this one. Right about there's the middle. Okay. See how accurately I can run this bead down without. Not bad. That'll work. Put that in there. And the final piece. Get her on there. Like that. Put a nice blob of glue on there. Right in here. Put my cardboard box, my cereal box, cardboard, on there like that. I'm going to hold it till the glue sets up. Let's lay a nice bead of glue on there. And let's just pull that around like that. That's going to work just fine. And then we can just come along and run a bead of glue like that. Run a bead of glue like this in there. And then we can just trim this off. Let's put this one in place. Put this on here like this. And I can use this as our guide, our 90 guide. Make sure it's 90 degrees or more or less. We can position the mold in place like this, and we can put this piece of cardboard into place. This is the thing that's going to hold it up. Put the other side on like this. That should hold that nicely. Okay. And then we can glue this in here like this. Glue this little bad boy in there, like that. Just hot melting this box together. So you see how this case is coming together mighty quick. But this little case is all we're gonna need. There we go. We are coming together. Pretty nice. Let's get this glue on there. Like that. Let's pull this one on. Over here. And now all we got to do is hold it. And we have got ourselves a case. Snip this off. All right. Let's see if our mold fits. Let's see if it fits. Very exciting. Okay, sits right in there. This is the acid test. And my rubber band's going to be a little tight on this. They're a little tight maybe. Let's see. Let's take a look. Am I getting too much squeeze pressure? I'm looking for tight, clean holding pressure. Let's see here. Let me try something here. I'm not getting what I'm liking here. I'm not seeing what I'm liking yet. Let's see if we put a rubber band right across the middle, like that, to bring our bridges under control. That looks pretty good. Now that's too much pressure. I can see that's too much pressure because it's opening up this middle thing. So I got to find a rubber band that's going to be bigger or softer. Give me, maybe this is enough, just this one band right here. That doesn't, You know, is that enough? That might just work. That might be just perfect. All right, let's leave it at that. Time to pour some resin. And when I went to the big box Crafto store, I bought this same material, this amazing casting resin, which is the same brand as this rubber. So theoretically, they ought to work together perfectly. So I have not rehearsed this. I have not prepared. I have no idea if this is going to work. So we're going to find out together. Who the heck knows? So get your A side and your B side, as you would expect. I don't see any shaking requirements. Shake, shake, shake? No? All right, so they're not telling me I need to shake the B side. Well, maybe that's great. Ooh, this stuff is thin. This is like water thin. The kit comes with a couple of little measuring cups, a couple of little popsicle sticks. Very nice. Oh, and one other thing. Picked up some dies, and theoretically, these should work just fine. They are resin dies, and they were sold right next to this stuff, so I'm assuming, by trusting the retailer, that they are selling a dye product that's going to work with a resin product. Got some paper cups handy, and I've got our duck. So now the question is, how much resin do I need to fill this mold? And how do you know how much resin to mix up? If you're doing it cold, you've never done it before, how do you figure it out? The way I generally do it, quite frankly, is by eye. I just guess. And I tend to want to overguess, so I'm willing to waste a little bit of resin on the first pour, but not at the price of this stuff. So I want to be more accurate. So one way to do it, of course, is just simply to fill the mold cavity with water, pour the water out and measure how much you need. This resin is mixed by volume. Most resins, or at least the resins that I use, are mixed by weight because the A and B sides don't weigh the same and it's not the same volume. But this stuff is by volume, so we can trust a volume measurement. But here's the thing. If I put water in this mold and I measure it, I got a wet mold. How am I going to know when that mold is dry? It's time over money. I don't have time to sit there and try to get all the water out. And then there's another thing. It can't be damp. It can't have the tiniest amount of moisture in it, or it's going to kick the resin into a foam state. It's just going to foam the resin. Because urethane resin hates moisture. It hates water. Or it doesn't hate it. It just turns itself into foam in the presence of water. So that's no good. So I don't like putting water in my molds. I don't like water anywhere near urethane resins. But there is a water method that we can use, and that's the displacement method. So you find yourself a handy dandy measuring cup that's graduated, has some markings on the side. Let's see, how much are we going to need here? About a cup and a half. Let's put a cup and a half of water in there. This is not bottled water. It's not purified water. It's just tap water. It's just a handy dispenser. So let me put in a cup and a half. Now I want to be accurate where I start. Let me check. Okay, so we're right on the cup and a half line. In you go, duck. All right, we're a little bit short of a cup and 3/4. So that means that quarter of a cup is going to fill this cavity. All right, now we know how much we need. So let's dispense some B side. Just got my little B cup. I'm just going to make a test. Let's put some dye into the B side. A few drops. Ooh, I don't know how much that was. Now, let's mix up a small amount of A and a small amount of B. What am I doing here? 5 cc's, 5 milliliters. How's that looking? Pretty close to 5. Same thing on the A side. Pretty close to the same amount. I am not a fan of the imprecision of volume measuring. I like weight measuring, but okay, we are stuck with what we've got. Let's dispense. This is my first time I've ever dispensed this particular casting resin. And let's stir. Let's see if this stuff gels. Let's see if it foams. Let's see what happens. Feeling more and more confident about this open time. So while we wait for this test to happen, let's go ahead and dispense out. B side, B side, B side. Okay. Here's the A side. How are we doing here? Anything happening? You know what? I'm confident about that open time. That's not bad. So nothing's happening yet. That's plenty of time to work with it. So that's good to know. I like to know that I have enough time to dispense and do what I need to do. This hasn't even started to gel yet, so we're still good. Okay, let's dispense out the A side and measure it out. How we doing? Look at that, it kicks. Okay, this lightning kicked. It just went, and it just kicked. Boy, it went from liquidy to hot. Ooh, it's hot too. White hot. Okay, it went super fast, but it gave us plenty of time. Let's set our duck in the mold. This band here that I'm putting on pulls in this direction. So that's pulling the bridge between the legs closed. And this band is just holding the sides closed. Looking at my mold, making sure I don't see parting lines. If I have an invisible parting line on the outside, then I have a reasonable chance of a pretty clean casting. All right, where's our test at? What happened to our test? Here's the test. Okay, it's leather hard. Hear that? It's leather hard, which means I have pretty high confidence that it's going to set up. So this stuff sets up quick. All right, are we ready? I like to pour from a bigger cup. Why? Because I can form a pour spout like this, and I'm going to need a pretty accurate pour. It's when you have 2 ounces of material in a 3-ounce cup, you just don't have the ability to control the flow out of a cup. Better to use a bigger cup than a small cup. It just works better. You drip less, you have more control, it works better. Let's just dump. Boom. And away we go. I'm going to try my best not to mix bubbles, just to stir, not to bubbleize. Boy, this stuff is really water thin. It's very thin. And that's good news for us because A, it's going to mix very easily, and B, bubbles are going to rise out really fast. Boy, I'm not seeing any bubbles in there at all. Let's pour. I'm going to shake because I want that material to go down into that beak. Okay. No time like the present. Boy, do I hope I have enough. Because if not, I'm going to have to do a 2-part pour. Ooh, look at that. Okay, again, I'm going to vibrate hard. I'm not seeing any bubbles rising up. Let's make sure we fill enough that we have some that we can sand off to make the bottoms of the feet nice and flat. Nice and flat. I'd rather sand material off than have to patch in more material later. Okay, let's find out, just for the fun of it, how much do we have left over in the cup? Look at that, hardly anything. Pretty darn good. Okay, I'm gonna turn the cameras off and let this thing cure, and then we're gonna come back for the big reveal. I'm supposed to create drama and suspense and tension. That's what they tell me to grow my channel. But I'm unveiling a plastic duck. It's what I got to work with, so. All right, let's take a look at said duck. It's not exactly a big rubber banding job. Resin is rock hard. Let's see, is there any warmth? Still a little residual warmth in the mold. Okay, let's crack this thing open. Did we do it, kids? Are we gonna win? Are we gonna lose? Are we gonna cry? Are we gonna have thousands and thousands and thousands of bubbles? We're gonna have a foamy mass, a giant mess. What do we got? What do we got? It's releasing just fine. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Let's see what we got. Well, for one thing, see this, the mold adhered some of the finish off of the original duck, and that cleaned out there. Top surfaces are looking pretty nice. Really nice. The same cannot be said for the bottom surfaces. Little tiny bubble, little tiny bubble. Is this a usable casting? Absolutely, it's usable. It's from here, it's pretty clean, especially if I was going to paint it. So the question is, what can we do about these bubbles that are getting trapped against the top as the material rises out? This is why I love my pressure pot. I miss my pressure pots. See, the pressure pots would deal with all those bubbles. The way that I would deal with these bubbles now, of course, is to just sit there and open each one and fill them. And at the end of the day, you'd have a nice casting. This is actually pretty usable, pretty cute. But let's make another one. I'm going to try a little bit more of an aggressive technique on casting number 2, and let's see if we can't get rid of some of these bubbles. All right, so I'm going to try a different technique on this second casting and see if we can do a little better. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sort of a modified rotation / pour technique. Now I can already hear, I'm going to answer the comments before I get them. I'm going to have people saying to me, why don't you coat the inside of the mold with talc? Here's my reasoning for not doing that. Number one, it's never worked that great for me. I have found problems where the talc gets kind of stuck in the fine details, like in the outer crevices, anything like that. So when you want to get your casting done, you find that the talc doesn't wick the resin into those areas. You just have talc sitting on the surface of a casting that has lost some of its details. So the argument then is, well, you have to put a very, very, very fine, even coat of talc on the mold. First of all, that's time intensive, and time is money, and I don't have time for that nonsense. And by the time I talc up a few molds, I'd rather go out and buy a pressure pot. But the other reason specifically with this duck is, right now I have him cut down to about here, which means I really have no access to the head and beak looking down in the mold. There's no way I could talc down in here effectively. I'd have to cut and sacrifice a much larger parting line. And meanwhile, I got a perfect casting down in here. The only place I had problems was here on the top surfaces. I'm not going to use talc. You guys can yell and scream and tell me I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how to do it, and then all like that. Fine. You do it your way, and send me pictures of your castings. I actually, by the way, I believe you. I suppose you could get a technique together, make it work. I don't know how. But there's a reason that 30 years ago I ran right out and invested in air modifying systems, vacuum and pressure. It just makes your job 100% easier, and you don't fuss around with any of this nonsense. Pour about half of it in, seal it up, and let's rotate it around. Let's just see if we can't coat the inner surfaces of this duck all the way around, and then finish the pour. All right. Okay, ready to see our second pouring. Who knows? Let's see what we got. It's always exciting. See what horrors have appeared. Oh, lordy, lordy, lord. All right, let's take a look. I thought there was a possibility of this. I thought so, and I was right. We made the bubble problem way, way worse. Well, that didn't work out so good, huh? You know, I make these videos, and you'd think that I would learn from them, but I guess not, huh? So if you'll recall in the Pug Mug video, the fur of the dog gave us a lot of problems, and it caught a lot of bubbles in a rotation situation. So as the resin coated the inside of the mold, all that heavy fur texture caught a lot of bubbles. Well, exactly the same thing as this duck, and so it just didn't work. But what we could try is we could try to use the same solution in a pouring mold as was successful in that rotation mold, and that is to pre-paint the surfaces that are going to give us a problem. So to that effect, I mixed up some small amount of AB. Let's dump it. We're going to have to move relatively quickly here. Okay. There's no guarantees that this is going to work out, but it's going to be an interesting experiment. Anyway, give it a try. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Let's spread this open, and let's paint the surfaces that gave us all the trouble. This is where we caught all the troubles. Okay. Now, I should be able to get this mold together before this stuff gels and peel off the surfaces. Oh boy, wow, okay. Look at that foaming, look at it. So that means that there's just a small amount of moisture in there, just enough moisture left in there in these little mix cups. Wow, this stuff is hypersensitive to foaming. I cleaned out these cups, I wiped them out but there was still enough residual moisture in this, which means a microscopic amount, to cause this foaming. Which tells me that this mix, when I put this together, is probably going to foam too. Let's do it. Let's find out. This is a learning channel, right? This is the kind of problems that you're going to have, and you can see why I have the same. Now, by the way, if I use this resin and I put it in a pressure pot, it could not foam. This is why I have pressure pots. It's just unbelievable. So I'm going to waste this resin because I don't think it's going to work. I think, boom, it's going to foam. Watch, it won't foam, and I'll be just so pissed off. La-di-da-di-da-di-da. You know what I might do just for the heck of it? I might pour it into the duck anyway. So what if it foams? Pour. Go. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. Let's get that down in that beak. Shaky, shaky. Get it down in that tail. Who knows? I think what we're going to have is a massive foam explosion. Man, oh man. All right. Let's see. Let's see what we get. This batch is not foaming. I'm going to keep doing this until I get it right, so help me. All right, let's turn off the camera. We'll come back and we'll evaluate. Okay, let's see what kind of foamy mess we made in this. Casting number 3. Let's see how we look. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's pop it out. A little bit more flash, no big deal, but you know what? Despite the fact that there is no doubt some mild foamage, I gotta say it didn't, you know, where the foam hurt us was here in the tail. We caught some wicked holes in the tail, but those would be easy to fix. But really and truly, it did foam in here a little bit, but the surface casting is not bad. That's way better than I thought it was gonna be. See, we have this wicked bubble in the tail and tiny little bubbles in the tail, but boy, in the feathers, really not bad. Proof of concept. Let's try that again and see if we can go for perfection. So this is strictly by eye, which is why, again, I don't love volume measuring, because it's not precise. On a gram scale, you're precise to a fraction of a gram if you want to be. And that is better. Weirdly enough, casting is a game that wants you to be pretty darn precise. Okay, those are pretty even. Snurred some dye in there, and let's stir this. What we're going to do is we're going to eyeball measure a small amount of resin. This is really difficult to do, eyeballing like this. It's really hard for me to get you to be able to see what I'm doing, but bottom line here is all I'm doing is I'm coating the upper surfaces. It's actually the bottom surfaces of the duck. But in the mold, the bottom surfaces are the upper surfaces, because everything is upside down and backwards. So we brush this resin on here, liberally coating the bottom. Got it pretty well coated up. Okay, we're going to call that good. Let's put this in its cradle. Let's pour in the A, and I think we're going to want a little bit of B left over in the cup. Okay, boy, am I eyeballing. Not my favorite thing. I don't trust eyeballing with resin. I like to know, and scales are a great way to know. Measuring is a great way to know. You can't really do anything unless you measure it. Now, one thing I do want to do, I'm going to pour in here. Pour a nice dollop in there. Let's get it down into that beak. But more than that, let's make sure it's down into that tail. We're catching a lot of bubbles in that tail, which is bumming me out. And here's an interesting fun, not fun thing. Ran out of res. So let's add a little more res to the mix, shall we? This is another problem with eyeballing. With a scale, I would have this absolutely precise. And I don't have it absolutely precise. It's going to be a little a two-tone, I fear. Oh, I was just at the very, very, very top. Okay. Good. Okay. Let's look at our fourth and last casting of this video. Already, I can tell you, remember what I said about how it's hard to eyeball small amounts of resin? This is another reason I very much prefer gram scales. I eyeballed that last little fill mix that I did to fill the bottom of the feet and missed it. It's a little soft, should be rock hard. It's almost impossible to eyeball measure small quantities of resin. If you're just off by a minute amount, it's either going to be brittle, too much A, or it's going to be soft and gummy, too much B. So lessons learned. You know, this video has been really good for me to make because it has reminded me how difficult mold making and casting is to do when you don't have the gear. I take my gear for granted. I've worked with it for so many years. Let's take a look at this last casting. We already know that the bottoms of the feet are going to be a little soft, but let's see what else we got going on in here. So this is the one, let me remind you, I painted the resin on the underside, the surface that was going to catch all the bubbles. There's a little flashing, but certainly not bad. Parting line is very good. It's pretty clean. There are some tiny pin bubbles, but really and truly, it's a pretty clean casting. So, you know, what have we learned? We made 4 castings. All of them are usable. All of them are fixable. It's really when you do additions that the pressure pot pays for itself. With a cut mold and a bubble-free casting, you'll have a little bit of parting line, a little bit of flashing to clean up, but you're done. And if you're doing an addition of 100 or 200 or 500 or something, that puts a tremendous amount of time in your pocket. If you have to fill bubbles on 100 castings or 200 castings, and it takes you a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes per casting, that adds up to days of work. And it also means you either have to charge a fortune for your work or you're not going to make a profit. It's possible as a hobby caster to make perfectly serviceable castings. Yeah, you're going to have some cleanup, but who cares? It's a hobby. You're doing it for fun, and the holes are actually easy and quick to repair. But if you're a professional and you're doing it to try to make a living and you're trying to eke a profit out of your studio, you've got to have the tools. You have to have them. But like I said, this was good for me because it really reminded me of the struggles that you guys go through when you're making castings without equipment. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to watch this video next. And keep your projects coming, keep your questions coming, keep your comments coming. You know I enjoy hearing from all of you, and I will see you next week.